Hello, everyone. Welcome to another great week of learning. This week, we're going to focus on explicit and implicit relationships within nonfiction text. What on earth does that mean? Okay, well, you know how to infer, right? Read between the lines. That is implicit. You're implying, you're inferring that the text says something even though it doesn't actually say it. Explicit means right there in the text. I mean, you are lifting the words off of the page and writing them down. And then you stop and you use your schema and you think about those things. Remember last week we talked about schema. It's those folders inside your brain that you open up and it's got all of this information that you've ever learned or experienced. So as we read this book, Kenya, which we're not reading the whole thing, just quite a few pages that are pretty interesting. As we read this book, Kenya, we're going to be lifting words right off the text called explicit. I have our T-chart here called explicit. And then we're going to use our schema and we're going to think about those words and then we're going to make an inference or imply something. Make an implicit judgment about what those words say. Okay? Awesome. I'm so excited to get started. Kenya. Now, I picked Kenya because in light of everything going on in our world, Africa is having a hard time because they rely on people to bring food to them. And because the borders are closed due to the coronavirus, they're having a hard time getting food. And it just kind of breaks my heart. So I want us to study Kenya and learn more about them. Table of contents. We know that is in a nonfiction text. Look at this. We've got a map. There's Kenya. Kenya is in Africa. As you can see, it is a country within Africa. Okay, we're going to go to our first page here. Gosh darn it, I'm so sorry. Talk about when did Kenya become a country? And I'm going to be writing some things down. Okay, I've got my notes here. Here we go. Let me scoot over. All right. Kenya became an independent country on December 12, 1963. Before that, it was governed by the United Kingdom, UK, often referred to as Britain. The British began their rule in 1895. They took the best land for farming. The British passed laws so that Africans could not own land in their own country. Africans also could not vote. In the 1940s, a group called the Kikuyu objected to these laws. They joined with other Africans to challenge and fight the British. Many Africans were jailed or killed. Here's a fact. Jomo Kenyatta was a leader of the Africans challenging British rule. He was jailed for 8 years for his ideas and actions. Here's a caption for this photo. After being in prison, Jomo Kenyatta helped Kenya gain independence and became its first president. What a cool story. In 1963, the British government left the country. Jomo Kenyatta was elected the first president of the newly formed Kenya. After he died in 1978, Vice President Daniel Arap Moi became president. Okay. The words I'm going to explicitly lift right off the page are the British began the rule in 1895, and they took the best land for farming. The British passed laws so that Africans could not own land, and they were not allowed to vote. That's a lot. So let's summarize this, okay, into one sentence that we can write down on our T-chart. The British ruled Kenya by taking the best land for farming and would not let Africans own land or vote. you need to pause, right now would be a good time. The British ruled Kenya by taking the best land for farming and would not let Africans own land or vote. Okay. Here's my thoughts on this. My schema has info about how African Americans were treated in the United States of America as slaves, okay? So my schema folder on slavery has now been opened because of this statement about the British not letting the Africans in their own country own land or vote. If you recall, back in the day, slaves were only counted as 3/5 of a person. 3/5. They weren't even counted as a whole person. It's ridiculous. They also were not allowed to own their own land, though they worked the land for their slave owners. So my schema folder's been ripped open here, and I'm seeing a comparison. I have a feeling, though the text never says these Africans were mistreated, they were treated as slaves, it never says that. I can imply, I can infer, I can read between the lines based on my schema and realize they were not treated fairly, okay, in their own country. And it wasn't until 1963, okay, 1963, that wasn't that long ago. That's like my parents' generation, my dad and my mom, your grandparents' generation. That's when Kenya became an independent country. How sad. So for my implying part, I can assume that the people of Africa weren't treated fairly, okay? The people of Kenya, I should say. Were not treated fairly. The text never says, hey, the people of Kenya were never treated fairly. I'm implying that based on what the text actually says. So underneath implicit, you'll write the people of Kenya were not treated fairly. Super sad, isn't it? It kind of breaks my heart. Thankfully, it's not like that anymore, just like it's not like that anymore in our country. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, here's another interesting thing about this beautiful country. Got ourselves a little pie chart. It's reversed. We can see what it looks like in their country. This is in their city. That's what their city looks like. Okay, what kind of housing does Kenya have? Most Kenyans live in the countryside. Traditional houses are made of mud, twigs, and leaves. Today, many builders use stone. The Maasai people move from place to place to find food for their livestock. They build their homes quickly from sticks and mud. Where do people live in Kenya? All right, I remember that in 3rd grade you guys had to make a big display on urban and rural and all that cool stuff, country. Okay, so I'm going to show you this. 64% of Kenyans live in rural country, okay? Only 36% live in the urban city. Okay, about 1/3 of Kenyans live in the cities. Most city homes are made of stone. Outside Nairobi, poor Kenyans live in shanty towns. In these areas, people make homes from simple materials such as cardboard or scrap pieces of wood. So here's a caption for this photo. Stone buildings crowd together in Mombasa as new skyscrapers rise up in the distance. Okay, so explicitly, it says that 64% live in rural areas, which is the countryside. My schema folder is being ripped open here, and it tells me, I do know some things about Africa. I know that they always walk to get water. They don't have wells or running water in like their homes, okay? They have to walk somewhere to get water. And since 64% of the people live in rural country, I'm going to imply here, even though it doesn't say it, that most of Kenya and the people of Kenya are probably pretty poor and impoverished. It's a poor country. They don't have access to electricity or running water, and they have to do a lot of their own work to survive. And I'll show you more of that in a minute. So for explicit, I'm going to draw a line to keep my stuff separated. For explicit here, I'm going to write, it says, the text literally says, 64% live in rural areas, which is, we know, thanks to third grade, countryside. Okay, so I drew a line to keep my thoughts separated, and I wrote here, and you might want to pause it. It says 64% live in rural areas, and that is the countryside. All right, so now my schema knows that that they walk to water. They don't have access to electricity, running water, and they can't just go to a grocery store, bring home groceries, and put it in their refrigerator and cook it on their oven or on their stove. So I'm inferring that Kenya is a very impoverished country. They're very poor. Okay, I'm gonna write that. Kenya is a poor country. Okay. My schema folder also knows that as a third world country. I'm going to write that on here too because I think you need to be aware of that. Third world country. That means they're very poor. They don't have access to electricity and running water like we do. They don't have grocery stores they can go to. They can't bring their groceries home and put them in the refrigerator. Okay? So pause it if you need to. Kenya is a poor country, third world country. Did the text ever see that? No. I'm implying that based on my schema and based on the explicit words in the text. Okay, I'm going to go to another spot that actually confirms my thinking. Okay, what are Kenyans' major industries? You're going to be learning in social studies this week all about goods and services. And so here are the goods that Kenya provides for our country even, for the whole world, actually. What are Kenya's major industries? About 75% of Kenyans work in agriculture, so crops, farming. On large farms, coffee and tea are grown to sell as exports. Thank goodness for coffee, okay? I'm just going to take a coffee break. My coffee cup even says coffee, teach, grade, sleep. Okay, anyway. Small farmers grow maize to feed their families. Do you guys remember when we were studying about Native Americans, we talked about maize? It's like a corn. Tourism has become very important in Kenya. People come from all over the world to see Kenya's wildlife. Every morning and evening, tour groups ride into the countryside to look at the wild animals. In one day, they might see hippos, elephants, gazelles, water buffalo, and lions on the savannah. That sounds scary. Okay, here we go. This little table here shows what does Kenya import and export. Import means things that they bring into their country for their citizens, like goods such as machinery, oil, and motor vehicles. So in their own country, they don't make their own machinery, they don't have oil access, and they don't, in Kenya, and they don't make their own cars. Okay, so they have to bring those into Kenya. However, within Kenya, they have some exports, and those are the things that they send out of their country. So those are the things we can buy in the grocery store because they ship them out of their country, and that is tea, coffee, and fish. Very cool, right? In more urban areas, Kenyan factories make cement, paper, and beverages. So that 30 some odd % of people that live in the city, they might be working in factories, making cement, paper, and beverages. These products are then sold in Kenya or to other countries. Here we have a farmer farmers harvest coffee beans on large plantations to sell to countries around the world. Y'all, I did not know that coffee beans look like little tomatoes. Who would have thunk it? Okay, I bet inside is the little coffee bean. Okay, so explicitly it tells me that 75% of people in Kenya work on farms. I'm going to write that down. So I'm going to draw my line so I can have nice separated thoughts here. Okay, so it says, remember, explicitly words on the text. It says that 75% of Kenyans work on farms. Wowzers. Okay, so what does my schema folder say? Okay, so I'm opening my schema folder. And I know that people that work on farms, even in the United States of America, it's a hard job and they don't make a lot of money. So even though they're feeding America and they're feeding the world, I mean, I'm talking farms in Mexico, farms all over the world, and farms in the United States, they work tirelessly to grow these crops for us, get them ready, harvested, ship them out, and they don't make a lot of money. It's a hard job for little pay, okay? So 75% of Kenyans are farmers, and we already discussed that it's an impoverished third world country. I'm going to guess that even though the coffee I'm drinking could be from Kenya, and I'm excited about it, and I paid, like $3 to $5 for this coffee to make it home, they're not getting a lot of money, okay? So I am implying hardworking people, they're hardworking people who don't make a lot of money. Okay, so they are hardworking people that don't make a lot of money. That's so sad to me. They are hardworking people that don't make a lot of money. Okay, here we are. It says 75% of Kenyans work on farms. Okay, that's explicitly in the text, it tells me that. So then I ripped open my schema folder on farmers and saw they don't make a lot of money. It's a hard job. I mean, a hard job. They are hardworking people that don't make a lot of money. Wow. Says a lot about their character, right? Hard workers. Okay, that is how we use our schema to help us read between the lines, okay? And imply things, infer things, and thank goodness for my schema that I have about Africa and about, let's see, what else did I have schema on? Oh, rural countryside and farming, because I was made a better connection to the story and it tugged at my heartstrings. I could have read this book, it's all just facts. I could have read this book and had no connection and been like, oh cool, Kenyans farm, woo, I get my coffee from there. But because I have a schema on some of these things, I made a deeper connection to this story. It's not even a story, to the facts about this people, and I'm never going to forget them. And I'm going to think about them differently now, because I have a different connection. So use your schema, guys, as you read things. Get those folders open. Study. Think about these people. Think about the facts that you learn in a different way. It's not just boring facts. It's cool. Anyway, that was pretty fun. I'm going to hold this up one more time. If you need to get anything jotted down, pause. Okay. Awesome job. Good work. Keep it up. Tell your friends if they're not getting their work done to get their work done. Okay? Okay.